All right, welcome to the deep dive. I think everyone's got that image of helicopters, like so versatile they can land anywhere.
Yeah, they are.
But when you look at the statistics, they're a little bit more dangerous than flying a fixed-wing aircraft statistically.
They are. They are.
You think about it, the environments they operate in, sometimes very challenging, very varied.
Absolutely.
And sometimes pilots push the limits of maybe what they should be doing and what the machine can do.
Definitely, yeah.
That's just kind of the reality of it. But here's a kind of sobering thought. Over the past 20 years, even though technology has advanced, our training has gotten better, the accident rate for helicopters hasn't really gone down.
Yeah, it's pretty stagnant.
And this has really focused the FAA and a lot of the helicopter community on what they call the human factor. And the
Wow.
human factor is essentially, it boils down to pilot error.
Yeah, basically.
And that's what we're diving deep into today.
That's it.
Is how can helicopter pilots make better decisions? And our sources are talking about, they kind of zoom in on this single pilot resource management, SRM.
Yeah, single pilot resource manager.
And aeronautical decision-making, ADM.
Yeah.
And these are really important because it is estimated that about 80% of aviation accidents can be attributed to pilot error.
Oh, absolutely.
So these are not just about becoming a better pilot, but it's really about becoming a safer pilot.
Yeah, they're hand in hand. You
Yeah.
could be the best pilot in the world, but if you're unsafe, then obviously it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
So, what is SRM and ADM?
Right.
SRM is defined as a pilot's ability to effectively manage all available resources, and that's both inside the cockpit and outside the cockpit,
Yeah, that's a key point.
before and during flight to ensure a successful outcome.
Absolutely. The planning part is super crucial,
Yeah.
especially in helicopters.
Yeah. And ADM is the process of gathering information,
Hmm.
analyzing that information, and making timely decisions to effectively manage risk.
Absolutely. So it's not just about flying the helicopter. It's about making decisions and analyzing and thinking ahead.
And what's really interesting is that even when you're flying solo, the principles of crew resource management, or CRM, still apply.
Definitely.
So even as a single pilot, you can and should leverage resources like ATC,
you.
flight service stations.
Yep. Those are all resources that can make your flight safer and more efficient.
So in this deep dive, we're going to pull out what we think are the core nuggets from all this material. And we're talking about understanding and managing risk, handling your workload effectively, maintaining situational awareness, which is absolutely crucial, especially in helicopters,
Yes.
avoiding controlled flight into terrain, CFIT,
Right.
and then making smart choices about, whether to use or not to use automation.
Yeah, knowing when to trust your own judgment and when to rely on the system.
So this is kind of like your cheat sheet for understanding some of these really important safety principles.
Absolutely. Hopefully this will give you some food for thought.
All right, so let's unpack this concept of the poor judgment chain.
Okay, yeah, this is a good one.
So the idea here is that a lot of accidents that are related to human factors aren't the result of one giant mistake.
Right.
It's actually a sequence of small contributing errors.
Yeah, like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another, and eventually you get this chain reaction that results in an accident.
And it's often called the poor judgment chain or the error chain.
Yep, it's a chain of bad decisions.
Yeah. And the important takeaway here is that if you can identify and break even just one of those links, you can actually change the outcome and prevent the accident.
Exactly.
And our sources give us a really good example of this.
Okay.
They call it Scenario A. It involves a helicopter air ambulance pilot.
Ah, yeah, the HA world. Always interesting.
Yeah. And this pilot is nearing the end of his shift,
Okay.
and he gets a request for a patient pickup.
Right.
Roadside accident. Gotta go pick him up.
Got it.
Now, he's not feeling that great, not feeling well,
Oh, yeah.
and he's looking forward to getting off shift.
So he's already not in the best mindset.
Right. He checks the location and he thinks, well, I can probably squeeze this in.
Oh, there's that word probably.
Probably.
We'll get to that later.
Probably squeeze this in before the end of my shift, even though there are thunderstorms approaching.
Not a good start.
Yeah. So right away, we have a couple of links forming in this chain.
Yeah, I mean, flying while not feeling well,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
Yeah.
And then not accounting for potential delays, especially with weather coming in, that's another.
Right. He's thinking ideal conditions for the flight time, but doesn't factor in any delays.
Yeah, classic mistake.
He arrives at the scene, and immediately he's not comfortable with the landing area.
Uh-oh.
It's surrounded by tall trees.
Not ideal.
No. He tries to find another spot to land, but there really isn't one nearby.
So he's feeling the pressure already. Gotta get this patient. Gotta get out of there.
So he decides to make the original unsuitable area work.
Okay, so now he's pushing it a little bit.
Yeah. Another link in the chain, isn't it?
Definitely. Proceeding with a landing when you know there's a hazard, that's never good.
Yeah.
Especially in a helicopter where margins are already tight.
So a significant delay occurs.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. The patient extrication takes 30 minutes longer than he expected.
Right, so now the time pressure is really on.
Yeah, and now he's really feeling that pressure of his impending shift change, right?
Yep, that self-imposed deadline.
Yeah. But even with the storm getting closer,
Oh no.
winds picking up noticeably, the pilot decides to proceed with the flight.
That's not good.
His rationale is, I'm committed now.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
The patient's on board, I'm out of time.
Classic get there-itis.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, unfortunately.
He attempts a near vertical takeoff to clear those trees.
Oh boy, trying to get out of a tight spot.
Uses the wind information he observed during landing to choose his departure path.
So he's relying on old information now.
Yeah.
The wind could have completely changed in that time.
Shortly after liftoff, he loses control and the helicopter crashes.
That's a tough scenario.
Yeah, so it illustrates how one questionable decision can snowball into the next, right?
Absolutely. It's like a downward spiral.
Really reducing your options and amplifying the risk as you go.
Yep. Each decision limits your choices for the next one.
And the errors here are pretty clear. Flying while feeling unwell.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Not accounting for potential delays.
Especially with weather involved.
Forcing a landing in an unsuitable area due to time pressure.
Right. Feeling rushed.
Attempting a takeoff in deteriorating weather, again driven by that time pressure.
Yep. That get there-itis kicking in again.
And then using outdated wind information.
Yeah, relying on old data when things are changing rapidly.
So each poor decision narrowed his margin for error.
Absolutely. It's like playing with fire.
Yeah. And I think the takeaway here is that sound decision-making is not just knowing the regulations and having good stick and rudder skills.
Right.
SRM and ADM training really focus on that entire decision-making process.
Exactly. It's about the mental game as much as the physical skills.
Yeah. And all the factors that influence our choices.
Yep, because sometimes it's not just about what you know, it's about how you're feeling, what pressures you're under.
Okay, so let's talk about some really practical tips.
Okay, love some practical tips.
From Max Trescott.
All right.
And he's a master CFI.
So yeah, that means he's a highly experienced and certified flight instructor.
Right. So he's been around the block a few times.
Many times, probably.
And the first thing he says is, and it kind of struck me when I read this,
Okay.
is try to purge the word probably from your vocabulary when you're flying.
Interesting, probably.
Because probably implies doubt.
Yeah, it does.
Right? Like, probably it'll be okay.
Yeah, like you're not really sure, but you're hoping for the best.
Yeah. You're crossing your fingers.
Not a good strategy in aviation.
He says that anytime you catch yourself thinking, my plan will probably work out,
Yeah.
you need to stop right there and reconsider.
Right. Reassess the situation.
And choose an option that you know will work.
That's the key. Knowing, not just hoping.
Right, so it's not hope-based planning.
Exactly. It's about making decisions based on facts and knowledge, not wishful thinking.
And I thought that was really powerful because it really forces you to not just hope for the best,
Right.
but to make a decision based on, do I understand this situation?
Yeah. Do you have a solid grasp of what's going on and what the likely outcomes are?
Right, what's likely going to happen?
Because if there's any doubt, you need to reconsider.
His second tip, and this was really kind of surprising to me,
Okay.
is that accident rates are actually more highly correlated with the number of hours a pilot has in a specific model of aircraft
Interesting. So it's not just about total flight time.
than total flight time.
Okay, so it's more about experience in that specific type.
In that specific type. So after a pilot gains about 100 hours in a particular helicopter,
Mm-hmm.
the risk of accidents drops off dramatically.
So it's about really getting to know that specific machine.
Yeah. So the advice here is to really concentrate your flying,
Okay.
especially when you're learning a new type in a single model.
Right. Focus on building that experience in one specific airframe.
He even goes so far as to say, maybe hold off on getting additional ratings in other helicopters
Interesting.
until you've got that 100 hours in your primary aircraft.
Makes sense. It's like mastering one instrument before moving on to the next.
Right. And if you're a low-time pilot, someone who doesn't fly a lot of hours per year, he says that maximizing those hours in a single model
Yeah.
is really, really crucial.
So quality over quantity, in a way.
Yeah.
Really getting that deep knowledge of the aircraft you're flying.
All right. And his third tip is something that he calls building experience from the armchair,
Oh, I like that.
which is essentially mental practice.
Okay. Yeah, we talk about this a lot in other areas of performance, too.
Yeah, athletes do it, musicians do it.
Absolutely. Visualization and mental rehearsal are powerful tools.
And it's basically mentally going through procedures, rehearsing radio calls, even visualizing the cockpit layout
Right.
and your actions in different phases of flight.
It's like having a mental simulator.
Yeah.
And it's free.
Free.
That's the best part.
It's a free simulator that you can use anytime.
You can practice emergency procedures, radio calls, anything you want.
So you can, mentally walk through emergency procedures, practice your communication with ATC.
Yep. And the more you do it, the more it becomes ingrained and the better you'll be able to react in a real situation.
Right. And what's really cool is that all three of those tips, while they seem like they're kind of addressing different parts of flying,
Yeah.
they all kind of drive home that central theme of ADM.
Absolutely. They're all about making informed, safe decisions.
So let's dig into that decision-making process a little bit more.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Our sources kind of lay out a framework for how we approach making decisions,
Okay, a mental model.
particularly in situations that require more than just an immediate automatic response.
Right, so not just reacting instinctively.
And what I thought was really good here is this distinction between what they call automatic decisions,
Okay.
which are those immediate reactions based on your training and your experience, like if you have an engine failure,
Yeah, those are the things that are drilled into you.
or a system failure.
Right, muscle memory almost.
But then there are the reflective decisions, which require more conscious thought and analysis.
Okay, so that's where the real decision-making comes in.
Right. And what a lot of people don't think about is the ground phase.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is really part of your decision-making. So how thorough you are with your pre-flight, your flight planning, weather briefings, weight and balance, performance planning.
It all sets the stage for the flight.
It's all decision-making.
If you do a good job on the ground, it makes the flight a lot easier and safer.
And the first step is really defining the problem.
Okay, so recognizing that there is a problem in the first place.
Right. It begins with recognizing that something has changed or that an expected change hasn't occurred.
Right, so something's not right.
And it's using your senses, your insight, your experience to kind of pinpoint exactly what the nature of that problem is and how severe it is.
Yeah, like a doctor diagnosing a patient.
But they say that incorrectly defining the problem can be a really big error.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic one.
If you don't actually get to the root of the problem, you're going to make a bad decision based on that.
Absolutely. If you misdiagnose the issue, you're going to apply the wrong solution.
We have an example, the canyon pickup scenario.
Okay, let's hear it.
Helicopter pilot picks up a group of firefighters.
Okay, firefighters.
And she realizes the aircraft is now only 20 pounds below its maximum gross weight.
All right, so she's pushing the limits there.
She's right there. But what she doesn't realize is that the firefighters, firefighters have a lot of gear.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And they've put all that gear in the baggage compartment, which has shifted the center of gravity
Oh, that's not good.
pretty far aft.
So the weight and balance is now off.
Because she hasn't really encountered weight imbalance issues in the past.
Okay.
On previous similar flights, she doesn't really perform the calculation.
Oh, that's a mistake.
She tries to just do it from memory
Not a good idea, especially when you're close to the limits.
and make an estimation based on a previous flight earlier in the day,
Right.
which was at a much lower density altitude.
So the performance would have been totally different.
Right. The performance charts indicated there was plenty of power,
Yeah.
but now it's hotter,
Uh-huh.
higher pressure altitude, higher density altitude.
But helicopter's not going to perform as well.
And even though her hover check was, kind of okay,
Marginally okay.
marginally okay, she made the decision there was sufficient power for takeoff.
So she's already making a bad decision based on incomplete information
Right.
and not really analyzing the situation fully.
This is a prime example of not fully defining the problem.
Absolutely. She's focused on the weight, but not the center of gravity or the density altitude.
So as she tries to climb out of the canyon,
Okay.
the nose pitches up excessively,
Uh-oh.
and she realizes she's not gaining altitude fast enough to clear the canyon wall ahead.
That's a bad feeling.
Now, this leads to the next step.
Okay.
In the decision-making process, choosing a course of action.
Right. What do you do in that situation?
Her initial thought is to pull back on the controls.
Yeah, that's the natural instinct.
But she realizes that that's high risk.
Absolutely. You could lose rotor RPM. You could stall the helicopter.
She might lose rotor RPM, and even if she did that, she might not clear the obstacle.
Right. So that's not a good option.
So her only remaining option is to turn back towards the landing zone, which is pretty small.
Oh, so she's in a tight spot.
Yeah. And then she has to actually implement that decision, right?
Right. Put it into action.
And evaluate the outcome.
And constantly reassess. Because things are changing rapidly.
Right. So this is not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. You're constantly evaluating, making adjustments.
As she makes that turn back towards the landing zone, her airspeed starts to decay.
Oh, no.
And the helicopter becomes more and more difficult to control.
Because of that aft center of gravity?
She realizes she's losing translational lift, and now she's in a situation where she might enter vortex ring state.
That's a dangerous situation.
Yeah. Her final decision is to try to do a shallow approach.
Okay.
And a run-on landing in that confined area.
So she's trying to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah. So the scenario kind of illustrates that bad decision-making, not necessarily lack of skills, can be the root cause of an incident.
Exactly. Sometimes it's not about what you can do with the helicopter. It's about the decisions you make.
And that initial decision, skipping the weight and balance and then taking off even though she had indications that things weren't right.
Yeah.
That painted her into a corner, right?
Absolutely. Those early decisions limited her options later on.
Yeah. Our sources talk about some actual decision-making models.
Okay, like frameworks for making decisions?
Yeah, they talk about the 5P model,
Right.
the ODA loop,
Okay.
and the DECIDE model.
So these are all acronyms to help pilots remember the steps.
And they all kind of boil down to define the problem, choose a course of action,
Right.
implement the decision,
Yeah.
evaluate the outcome.
So it's a systematic approach to decision-making.
And the takeaway here isn't that there's a single right answer.
Right.
Because every situation is different.
Exactly. It depends on your experience, your personal minimums, and your overall readiness.
It depends on the pilot's experience, their personal minimums, and your overall readiness.
It depends on the pilot's experience, their personal minimums, and their state of readiness. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's about having a process that you can apply to any situation.
So let's talk about self-assessment.
Okay, self-awareness is crucial.
As the pilot in command, you're responsible for the safety of the flight. Right.
Always.
And that means understanding your own limitations.
Absolutely. Knowing what you can and cannot do.
It's kind of like we pre-flight the aircraft
Yeah.
to make sure it's airworthy.
Right.
Well, we need to kind of pre-flight ourselves.
Do a personal check.
Make sure we're fit for flight.
Make sure you're good to go, mentally and physically.
And they suggest that you use what they call a personal fitness for flight checklist.
Okay, what does that look like?
Takes into account, your recent experience, your currency. How current are you in this type of operation?
Right.
How comfortable are you with the anticipated conditions?
So basically, am I ready for this flight?
And have you had any refresher training?
Yeah, staying up to date is important,
And do you need any?
especially in helicopters where things change so quickly.
Do you have personal weather minimums
Right. What are my limits?
that are more conservative than what's legally required?
Because legal minimums are just that, minimums.
And a big reminder here is that overconfidence.
Oh, yeah. That can be dangerous.
I've done this 100 times.
That's when you get complacent.
That can be as dangerous as a lack of experience.
Absolutely. Maybe even more so, because you're not as aware of the risks.
And to help you do this, to kind of self-assess, there's this checklist called I'm Safe.
Okay, I'm safe.
Illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, emotion.
So basically, anything that could affect your judgment or performance.
Right. It's a quick and easy way to just run through.
Yeah, just a mental check before you go flying.
Yeah, make sure you're good to go.
Make sure you're in the right headspace and physical condition.
Okay, let's talk about curiosity.
Curiosity, interesting.
Because it's the foundation of, progress in aviation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. But can it also present a hazard
That's a good question.
to flight safety?
I mean, you want to be curious, you want to learn, but you also don't want to take unnecessary risks.
Right. So our sources say that, on one hand, curiosity is absolutely fundamental to the advancement of aviation.
Yeah, it's what drives innovation and exploration.
Think back to all the pioneers.
Right, the Wright brothers, they were curious, they wanted to know if they could fly.
They were curious.
And look what they achieved.
But on the other hand, there's unchecked curiosity.
Okay, so that's where it gets dangerous.
That desire to test boundaries, explore the unknown.
Yeah. Pushing the limits without thinking about the consequence.
Without thinking about the consequences.
That's where things can go wrong.
That can actually be very dangerous in aviation.
Absolutely, because the consequences of a mistake in aviation can be pretty severe.
And they give some examples.
Okay, what kind of examples?
Like questioning the accuracy of a current ADIS report.
Oh, yeah, like doubting the weather information.
I wonder if that's really right.
Unless you have a really good reason, you should trust the official reports.
Or wondering how long your low fuel light will stay on.
Pushing the limits of your fuel.
I wonder how long that thing will stay on.
Not a good idea. You should always have a healthy fuel reserve.
Or even pushing the aircraft's limitations.
Yeah, exceeding weight limits, trying unauthorized maneuvers.
You know, weight limits, aerobatics.
That's just asking for trouble.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's not curiosity. That's recklessness.
All of those things stem from curiosity, but they can lead to disastrous outcomes.
Absolutely, and they can cloud your judgment, make you take unnecessary risks.
So the message here is that while curiosity is valuable,
Yeah,
it often drives us to learn and improve.
right.
Airmen must consistently adhere to established procedures and regulations
Yeah, there's a reason for those rules.
until a formal risk assessment is done.
So basically, don't just wing it based on curiosity.
Yeah. Don't be a test pilot.
Leave that to the professionals.
All right, let's move on to the PAVE checklist,
Okay, PAVE.
which is another really good tool for self-assessment
Right.
and proactive risk mitigation.
So this is all about managing risks before they become problems.
Pilot, aircraft, environment, and external pressures.
Okay, so it covers all the bases.
And it's designed as a personal minimums checklist
Right.
that helps pilots systematically think through
Okay.
all the potential risks associated with each of those 4 categories.
So it's a way to assess the overall risk of a flight.
So let's break it down. All right, let's do it.
Pilot.
Okay, the pilot themselves.
Physical, emotional readiness.
Are you feeling up to it?
Experience, recency, currency.
How much experience do you have, and is it current?
Total time and type.
Specifically in that type of helicopter.
Aircraft.
The machine itself.
Capable for the task.
Can it handle the mission?
Fuel, obviously.
Enough fuel for the flight, plus reserves.
Power margins.
Can it handle the density altitude, the weight, the wind?
Weight and CG. Is it within limits? And is the balance correct?
Any external loads?
Cargo, passengers, anything that changes the weight and balance.
Environment.
The world around you.
You know, how's the weather going to impact the performance of the helicopter?
Yeah, weather is a big factor in helicopter operations.
Can you control the helicopter in those winds, that terrain, that turbulence?
You need to be able to handle the elements.
And then external pressures.
Okay, so this is about the stuff outside of the actual flying,
Things that can affect your decision-making.
like deadlines, pressure from passengers, that kind of thing.
Are you trying to avoid the mission override mentality?
Right, where the mission becomes more important than safety.
Are there any time pressures, time is money kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a common one in commercial operations.
Pressure from others?
Trying to please people can lead to bad decisions.
So the PAVE checklist, used diligently during pre-flight planning, can help you systematically identify the risks associated with a flight.
So it's a tool for risk assessment.
And then you can decide if those risks can be managed.
Right, is this flight safe to go?
And remember, the pilot always has the authority
Always.
to cancel the flight.
Absolutely. If it's not safe, you don't go.
And developing risk mitigation strategies is really important.
Yeah, having a plan to deal with potential problems.
And establishing personal minimums
Right, what are your limits?
in each category.
What are you comfortable with?
They're unique to each pilot,
Everyone's different.
and they need to be reevaluated from time to time.
Yeah, your experience changes, your comfort level changes.
All right, let's go back and talk about SRM in detail.
Okay, single pilot resource management.
And we talked about it before, but it's really the application of those CRM principles
Right, crew resource management.
to single pilot operations,
So it's CRM for the solo pilot.
defined as the art and science of managing all resources
Okay, so it's both an art and a science.
available to a single pilot,
Makes sense.
inside the cockpit and outside the cockpit,
We talked about that before. Those external resources are key.
before and during flight to ensure a successful outcome.
And safety is a big part of that successful outcome.
It really integrates risk management,
Mm-hmm.
maintaining situational awareness,
Yeah.